Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Daniel Estulin. Welcome to our internet-based show called World at Large. So I want to do the final analysis of 2024 of World at Large. Let's start with Europe. So we're faced with a situation where European civilization is facing existential threat. The situation in the United States is different, and it is here that the most important events of 2024 took place. The United States of America is still a great power, and all events within it, needless to say, are not of local but of global nature. And the key moment, of course, was the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, the actual change of leadership in the Democratic Party, the change of the presidential candidate not seen before. I mean, we've never had this situation before where a presidential candidate on the fly in the Democratic Party, going from the sitting president to unelected candidate who replaced him, then subsequent defeat of this unelected candidate, Kamala Harris, and the victory of Donald Trump. And these events dramatically changed the political landscape, both in the United States itself and around the world. For Russia, this is not a positive development of events, not by a long shot, because the Harris option was better for Russia, for the simple reason that Kamala Harris has nothing that a major political figure needs to be successful. She's dumb as shit. She has no charisma, no moral rectitude, no will. And will is, by the way, more important than charisma and intelligence combined in the world of politics. And so Harris and the transnational controlling corporations of the United States would be in no way better for Russia. But with Harris president, the transnationals would have to act through her because she would have been president. And given her short-sightedness and lack of will, the United States would have lost another 4 years. And this, of course, would be a much bigger plus for China, a slight plus for Russia. But the positions of globalists would strengthen throughout the world had Harris become president, which would be, again, minus for Russia with its anti-globalist position. So it was, in a way, no win-win situation. And so in the new situation, we have the United States, which will develop dynamically with Trump at the helm, because it will be governed by a strong and strong-willed president with a formidable A-team behind him. And this is a challenge to China, also a challenge to Russia, and a very serious defeat for the transnational corporations. So, question, what does Trump's victory mean for the rest of the world? Well, Trump's victory will affect everything. Inside the United States, Trump will go into a do-or-die conflict with the transnational corporations and the Democratic Party. And the best they could hope for is to avoid a hot civil war, which they would lose. But as we see, the Democrats and the ultra-globalists have decided to put up tough resistance to Trump, and I'm inclined to think that they will bring the situation to a direct confrontation. And for them, this is, again, do or die. I emphasize it's not Donald Trump who will bring the situation to a head, but the transnationals and the Democratic Party who has been painted into a corner. They have no way out. And Trump will gladly accept the challenge because all the Trump cards, so to speak, are in his hands and given, him the opportunity to quickly implement 3 important measures. Number 1, reindustrialization of the United States of America. Number 2, democratization of the United States. What does it mean? It means remove the Democrats associated with transnational corporations from all governing structures and positions, from the position of governors, from key positions in the Army, in the State Department, intelligence agencies, etc., etc. And point number 3, sharp reduction of the number of migrants. Now, while Donald Trump doesn't really care much or at all about migrants in general, the main thing he needs to do is to deprive them of their right to vote, because if they're legitimized and they begin to vote, you're talking about millions of votes who will go to the Democratic Party in the future. So the wall policy, will definitely be back on the table, and it's from this point of view that his appeal both to Canada and to Mexico should be considered. This is a kind of a polite hint that if Mexico and Canada use their territory as the launching pad for migrants, they may lose their independence. Another thing, Elon Musk's position is important. Trump invited him to his home for the New Year's Eve. Now, Musk has a difficult choice to make, and this is important not only for him, but also for Trump and for America, but it's also very important for the entire world. Why? Because it suddenly turned out that Musk is an interesting, efficient, and very charismatic politician. Now, he cannot become the president of the United States because he was not born in the United States, but he can occupy the most important positions in power. And so this creates a choice. Should Musk continue to go into politics or continue to work on the program of human expansion into space? Because it's not possible to do both at the same time. And so Musk faces a fundamental choice, Earth or space. And so as things stand right now, Europe is no longer a subject. But with Trump's victory, paradoxically enough, Europe actually has a chance to survive. For example, in Germany, Scholz's government resigned, and in France, Macron's rating fell to, 25%? And so Europe, as things stand, has chosen the scenario of slow and unofficial dismantling of the European Union. And the position of the right-leaning parties in Europe is solidarity, strong state power, strong national economy, family as the cornerstone of society, and so thus the relegation of human rights, LGBT rights, migrants' rights to the background. There's another important trend, in Europe. It seems that this year Great Britain is no longer considered a separate entity, a separate subject, and is in fact perceived as part of Europe, although it left the European Union. Now, nothing in Europe depends on Great Britain anymore. This is very positive for Russia, which has been at war with Great Britain as the global power for centuries. Now, for Russia, 2024 was much more difficult and different than 2023. 2024 was the year of a radical turning point in the war in Ukraine. The situation on the front is catastrophic for Ukraine. And so any talk of future counteroffensive by Ukraine remains just talk. Ukraine has no resources, no people, or will for this adventure. And I think it's too late to talk about direct NATO assistance or intervention. This should have been done, any inkling of doing this should have been done about a year and a half ago. And so the entire world is waiting for Trump's inauguration on 20th of January. A few months later, be it in May, be it in June, peace talks will begin between Trump and Putin. No one will invite Ukraine. No one will invite Europe to this conference, as neither Ukraine or Europe is a subject, and their opinion is of little importance. And so, if anything, Trump and Putin will divide Europe between them. On the positive note, 2024 has resolved Russia's military issues. On the negative note, 2024 has not resolved Russia's economic issues. Russia's central bank is still convinced that destroying Russia's economy is the best course to take. And of course it is, because you have to remember that the Russian central bank works directly for the International Monetary Fund. And so again, 2024 was the year of the struggle for peace, for the completion of the special military operation and transition to near future peace negotiations. Now these negotiations will inevitably begin sooner rather than later. And this has become obvious to everyone except Zelensky. And so everyone around him, for example, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, also Orban in Hungary, they're trying to convince him to accept this idea. People of Ukraine understand this. Ukrainian military understand this better than anyone else. And they understand that the longer the war drags on, the less wiggle room there is for Ukraine. Now, a few other things to keep in mind. Number one, changes in the financial policy of the Central Bank of Russia and the entire financial bloc of government, they're still tied to the monetary rate of the World Bank. Russia must definitely move away from this to become an independent, truly independent country. Number two, economic growth and financing of enterprises, including military-industrial complex. Russia urgently needs to avoid an economic crisis at the end of the war and immediately after its end. That's the danger, especially given that the conflict in Ukraine is the first, but not the last. There are many flashpoints where such conflicts can break out. For example, the conflict is already underway in Africa. It continues in the Middle East. And there is a possibility, or a most likely probability, of its appearing in Central Asia. That's in Russia's backyard. Point number three, the third point, oddly enough, is connected with Elon Musk. It's always necessary to resolve military issues if you want to be a successful independent country. But if Russia wants to participate in the next stage of world development, then it cannot ignore Musk's challenge, and it cannot ignore the challenges of space. Russia needs to solve problems, but not in military space, because that has been taken care of. And at the same time, I'd like to note that if Russia solved the problems in civilian space, which it has not, then the military problem in space will solve itself. And so Russia needs a strategy for the development of space research and all the research related to it, which is nuclear, material science, electronics, photonics, the terahertz range. And so 2025 should bring Russia to major changes, okay, in the list of national and international priorities. And I'd like to add a few things to the results of what we already said about 2024. Number one, the first is the new situation in the Middle East. The Middle East today is not a conflict between Israel on the one hand and the Arabs on the other. It's a conflict between Turkey on the one hand and Israel, and probably against Arabs as well. And this is a completely different situation that has not existed since the beginning of the 20th century. And this change is extremely significant and essential to understand. And so throughout 2025, there will be a sharp strengthening of Turkey's position in the Middle East, and at the same time, remember my words, weakening of the position of Israel, the United States, leading Arab countries, and above all, Egypt. Point number two, I've said it time and again, I'm not a supporter of globalization projects like BRICS, but the BRICS conference in Kazan in Russia was an important moment in 2024, and it would be wrong not to take this into account. And this conference showed that there really is more than one center of power in the world, that the Washington consensus is over and done with. Point number three, Scholz's nomination in Germany for chancellor from the SPD party is not only the consent of the German elite to Merz, because they're saying anything but AfD. This is a trend started by the inability of the Global Democratic Party to nominate from its ranks inadequate figure who would appeal to a wide range of voters. And so Macron, for example, was their last gasp effort. And in the United States, the deep state has no one better than Biden. Harris has proven it. And so the reshuffling of rating non-entities at the head of the Great Britain shows that the deep state does not really care who is elected president or prime minister in what capitalist country. Why? Because society will be governed by COVID, artificial intelligence, European Union bureaucrats. In other words, by those who do not need to go to the electorate. Point number four, if we were to describe the essence of the current world turn in a nutshell, then the special military operation and the threat of its scaling to European countries show that there is no alternative to reaching an agreement. If the confrontation continues, okay, and the conflict escalates further on the part of the West, Russia will use the latest, I emphasize, non-nuclear strategic missile systems, which is years ahead of anything that the West can offer, which will either nullify the military potential of the West, and this will be its capitulation, or force the West to use nuclear weapons first. But then Russia will bang. Oh, it will definitely bang. After which, in general, the entire world will go to hell. Of course, the British are not against such a scenario so that Russia and the United States can exchange nuclear strikes and destroy each other, thinking that they, London, will be forgotten, after which they will restore their right to the core empire. But, and there's a big but, the rest of the world's influence groups have thoughts about this and realize that it's time to end London's game for good, which is what Donald Trump is demonstrating to the entire world. And so finally, accordingly, Russia absolutely will have to make a deal. First, we will agree on spheres of influence with the United States. Then Russia will pull China into the negotiating process. And so the spheres of influence will be built at the expense of Europe, at the expense of South America, Africa, Southeast Asia. For example, it's possible that the option of unified or unifying Germany will be recognized as a mistake, since Russia's security guarantees agreed upon in the 1980s were never observed, and West Germany behaved irresponsibly. For example, its tanks are burning on Russian soil again. Finland will also be included in our spheres of influence. Again, against this backdrop of such tectonic changes and global deals, strap yourselves in. 2025 is going to be a wild ride. I'm Daniel Estulin. Thanks for joining us. Please sign up to our free YouTube channel and our program World at Large, or even better, if you want absolutely up-to-the-minute intelligence information, join our subscription-based channel, estulin.media. Thanks again, and until tomorrow, goodbye.